Welcome to this fireside chat that I'm having with Dr. Adam from KYP. We are here today to talk about how we operationalize our digital transformation for our customers, what needs to happen, and more importantly, how do we strike the right balance between bringing in technology and harnessing the power of operations to consistently delight our customers. I'll get to introductions in a bit, but I just wanted to get it started by saying that I don't think this is a topic that's new for many of us. But at the same time, I don't think this is a topic that is stale either. With so much happening in the world of tech, operations maturing, newer customer demands, this is one topic that I think will stay relevant for a long time to come. So with that said, a quick world of introductions. Hi, everyone. This is Prashant Kandukuri. I lead our go-to-market efforts for Alorica's Center of Enablement, which is called Alorica IQ. We are tasked with the job of actually making transformation real for our customers. So whether we bring in technologies, whether we bring in operational enablers, or we bring in things that focus on better customer experience or employee experience, we are the center of excellence to do that. I've been in this industry for a fairly long time, I'd say more than 20 years, playing a variety of roles, spanning operations to markets to being a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt myself. And I have the pleasure of being with Adam today. He doesn't like to be called Dr. Adam, but he is actually a highly qualified professional. Adam, I think we met a couple of years ago when I joined this organization. Plenty of beautiful interactions. But I think the one thing that I always think has stood out for me is your journey to where you are today and how that's made you the person that you are and how you're really looking to give back to the society. So thank you for being with me today. Really looking forward to this conversation. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Prashant. I'm thrilled to be here today as a founder and CEO of KYP, a platform that operates across all continents, providing hopefully invaluable insights and recommendations on where to automate and augment human capabilities with AI. Throughout my professional journey, which is probably similar in terms of duration to yours. It has been roughly 25 years. I've served as a global leader in process excellence context, intelligent automation context for one of the leading systems integrators, which obviously also try to excel in delivering exceptional customer experience, right? And this background has given me a strong affinity for Alorica's value proposition, which is our outstanding partner. And I'm really excited to share my experiences with you today. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Beautiful. So let's get started. And just as a quick housekeeping check for our audiences, we highly encourage you to allow us to direct this conversation in the areas that are of interest to you. And the way for you to do that is to put your questions in the Q&A section, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So as and when a question pops up, please do put it out there. We will try and address them as we move along, or we've set time aside at the end. Either way, we will make sure we get to them, right? So as we get started, Adam, I think, this topic struck a chord with me because I know we've been talking about it for a few weeks, if not months, in terms of getting together, having this fireside chat. But I couldn't help go back to a recent experience of mine. In fact, as recent as last month, I was actually making a trip to India for a personal trip, and I was happily traveling across the Atlantic. And then there we go, we had a medical emergency, in fact, two medical emergencies, and we had to make a hard landing. In the process of doing that, I subsequently learned that we also had a bird strike. So what are the odds of all these things happening together? But by the time they resolved all of these issues, the pilots clocked out of their cockpit time, so we had to deplane. Now, what ensued was obviously a lot of chaos because, of course, this doesn't happen very often. But with that said, they had to deal with different people in different fashions, right? So people who could get into EU, either with Schengen or, your European passport could go in. So some of us with US, some of the others with US passports could go in, but the rest of us were stranded at the airport in a terminal which had restricted movement, right? But eventually things worked out, right? I think all of us made it to our destination anywhere from 24 to 36 hours beyond the 18-hour journey that we had. But it begged a question in my mind. And the question that it begged was, how do we look at these kind of experiences? And what I'm giving here is my experience from one instance. But if you look at it across industries, across verticals, across various moments of truth we have, the first thing that came to mind was consistency, right? How do we drive consistency in terms of, either in terms of the information that's passed on, the processes that are followed, or the support that's provided? I mean, there were some really brilliant airline staff that knew what was happening and could direct us, but there were others who were waiting for instructions and so on, right? Something else that caught my mind was failover, right? What would have happened if that staff wasn't available? Because there are not all many flights that fly into Madrid at that point in time. And the third thing that it begged the question was, they were available for a limited point of time. We were all by ourselves afterwards until we got to our flight. So which means for about 20 hours or so, we didn't know who to contact. So, all this made me think of this question that I really wanted to ask you in terms of, why is CX so important for us today, especially in the age of digital transformation? Because technology is advanced, processes have matured, we talk of change management, everything goes on, yet CX remains on the target list of almost every CEO in this industry. So what are your thoughts around it?
Well, I'm very much connected to you. And I have to say, as a customer, most of the times I have very positive experiences, right? I get what I need in emergency constellations, etc. But living in Germany, we are passionate about cars, as you know. And I got myself a new leased car, right? And there you have a button that you can press if you have questions, right? And because nowadays everything is digital. All the manuals are in the dashboard when you're driving. It's very comfortable to press the button if you want to figure out something, right? And I press the button, there is signal coming, nobody is picking up. And I had this for 5 times in the last 2 weeks, right? So it's not always as perfect as I would love to imagine it. There is potential to improve.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it all comes down to, I'm going to make a bold statement here, right? It's almost about, how is your experience in the moments that matter, right? Are you optimally experienced? Are you suboptimally experienced? And more often than not, obviously, it's in an industry where we have a lot of things going on. So again, it isn't that organizations do not want to make that experience great. It isn't that organizations do not want to invest in the right kind of tools and solutions to get there, right? But based on your assessment, Adam, how are companies working towards achieving that goal of theirs?
Well, to your point, Prashant, I think the key is to focus on what truly matters for your customer, rather than faster, better, cheaper, aka digital Olympic solution, right? We have to keep in mind that especially nowadays, for instance, Gen AI drives immediate benefit expectations, which is what the market demands every day from us, right? And the traditional transformation models will not help you succeed. So there is a challenge to be mastered for sure, and this is what we are observing across the planet.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. And I think there's also a lot of news around how AI is all set to conquer the world for us, right? I mean, there's a lot of information outflow there. But again, we are also seeing that it is going to be a step change. It will be a reality, but adoption of AI in general into businesses, organizations, right, even into daily life, is something that will take time, needs patience, but more importantly, will need a very structured approach. Awesome. So moving on, right? If we think about how we're talking AI, we're talking about making these experiences optimal in the moments that matter and so on and so forth. What are the other aspects about how we think about organizations is how do they future-proof themselves, right? So it's one thing to meet the immediate needs. It's one thing to cater to the needs of the market today and just what's happening today. But there's also a big tectonic shift that's happening with customers, consumers, what their expectations are, and how they respond to good and bad experiences. So what I'd really like to understand from you is what are organizations in your view doing to future-proof themselves and be ready for this tectonic shift that's happening?
Well, in all fairness, I think there is only one answer. You are either at the forefront of innovation and win, or your place will be taken by someone else. I don't see any other option. And as I said earlier, the latest AI craze creates immense pressure on business leaders to demonstrate use cases and results. Right? And this pressure is obviously cascaded throughout the corporate level, creating lots of confusion and also uncertainty. Right? The ultimate target is to empower your people to focus on their unique skill sets and leave the rest to constantly improving technology, if I may say so. So one day we may get to the point of zero agent CX, but it is not going to happen in the next 5 years for sure. I think we have entered the age of augmentation that will be increasing, right? So we as humans have the opportunity to focus on our core capabilities, but I would not go as far as being afraid of complete elimination of us. We still play an immense value.
Yeah, no, that's well said. And I think also as I reflect upon the conversations that we've had with our customers or we continue to have, there is always the appetite to bring in change, right? That change has happened through different levels, right? And as the technology evolves, there's greater and greater things that you can achieve with the help of technology. But in the true sense of the word, right, and to your point, right, there could be a contactless agent experience, if you will, which is some time away. But until we get there, and it's aspirational, let's put it like that, because humans still crave a human interactions. I don't think you'll ever be in a situation where it'll be a 100-0 kind of a thing. I also think that a lot of combinational forces will come in, right? So for example, we're talking about work that gets automated, which has been the story so far, and then AI starts to come in, and now Gen AI is there. We're now talking about augmented workforce, right? And then, of course, you'll always have a human in the place. So is it fair to say that the future of the workforce is going to be a combination of all the three with various elements of mix?
I believe so. I believe so, and it depends obviously on the industry, right? Looking to my automobile example, when you go to a factory nowadays in Germany, you barely see people, right? It's absolutely shocking, right? But still, testing of those vehicles that are just manufacturing or just driving it in front of the customer, machine cannot do this. I'm sorry.
That is true. That is true. So given that, I think there's general awareness of how that would evolve as a workforce within, again, customer experience as an industry or as a way to address your client needs. There's obviously the financial consideration. There's obviously a lot of technology aspects that come into play. But in terms of how decision makers should look at achieving these transformation goals, what do you think they should do?
That's a valid point. In my opinion, there are three main inhibitors that cause digital transformation delay. Right? There is lack of customer problem understanding, corresponding data and agility to trigger the right actions, and broader AI and tech competencies. This is what we need to develop. We are in the process of acquiring it, but it takes time. And it all starts with the customer problem, as I said, and the definition and alignment on what good looks like. That's absolutely paramount. Once you have it, you need the agility to activate it at scale across all involved parties, right? And nowadays, I think more than ever, the leaders have to demonstrate profound understanding and boldness to act. The option of doing nothing seems to be more appealing, maybe to some of you on the call as well, but actually delays the necessary outcomes by 12 to 18 months at least, right? So your actions from today are paramount to your success tomorrow. But you also, in my humble opinion, shall not set unrealistic expectations, right? We've seen that with robotic process automation, for instance, all these miracles that would happen, right? You don't need to standardize the processes, eliminate waste, robots will take care of everything. We got a lesson learned here. And once you address it, you obviously need the data, right? Data to make the informed decisions is absolutely paramount. And as you know, there is no AI without data. This is the base for everything. And last but not least, in my opinion, it's not enough to learn how to write a prompt, right? Companies need to better understand the technology and its business impact potential. How do I know it is the right tool, the platform working, and more importantly, how do I measure the progress of what I'm doing? As we see plenty of technologies appearing, but are they impacting, or it's just an excitement for the innovation team? I think there is profound difference between the two.
So in a way, it's like a three-legged stool, as I visualize it with what we are saying here, right? Number one is making sure you're aligned to where your customers' needs are, what they want, how they're evolving, and so on. The second aspect of it is to be realistic about when you can get there and how you get there. But then the third, and I think in my mind, one of the most important dimensions, and that's why we're talking today, is to how do we bring the agility, both from an ops and a technology standpoint, to work synergistically, right? To accelerate, to get to where you want, right? I mean, gone are the days where you could have the luxury of taking a project and let it work for 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, right? To something where you want returns in weeks, maybe preferably, but at least within a quarter or two, right? Depending on how deep it is. So that's a very interesting perspective. I couldn't help but think about how back in the day, and this goes back a few years, they used to say that every technology cycle of improvement within an organization, the timescale was measured in how many CIOs would be there to do it. So, and you're a CTO and the CEO yourself, right? So they used to say it could be between 2 and 3 CIOs to actually make a full technology change happen. Is that true anymore, or that's changed now?
Well, it's not going as fast as we would expect it. When I was setting up my company, one of our angel investors told me, Adam, you're full of passion and energy, but it will all happen much slower than you think. I think I can absolutely support him, and yet we have excelled completely in some other areas that I did not expect to happen so fast. Right? We are market leader, right? According to the Zenith intelligence zones. This is really tremendous achievements for me, being just in the third renewal process with some of the customers, right? So it's a journey of 5 years building the platform, and suddenly you can become a market leader. I would expect it to happen 2-3 years later. And I see there's a question, I think, in the
it's a good segue to that point now. I think the question is for you, which is, what have you seen to be successful for leadership buy-in?
That's a valid question. Thank you, Becky, for that. what I've experienced, especially in my previous professional career, was are we creating a real impact? Is there an ROI to be expected?
Mm-hmm.
And this was particularly painful in the RPA era, where I still remember one of my colleagues sitting in the CFO role. He said, "Look, Adam, we spend millions on it, but I can capture the benefits in hundreds, right? There's no business case." So I'm particularly picky about approving stuff nowadays, because they are all telling me it's going to create wonders. But what I would like to ensure is that we are able to predict what's going to happen, and we are measuring continuously the impact, having gates that are allowing us to stop if it's not working, or put even more energy into it if it's generating the necessary or desired outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have a question for you, Prashant, because you have seen similar challenges while working with your customers. So what are the largest roadblocks that you tend to focus on while addressing them? How does it work in reality?
So I go back to this, that, the traditional lens of looking at a challenge, or looking at, what we need to be doing, breaking it down into people, process, and technology. I think that's not changed. And I don't think it'll change, because those are really the key ingredients to success, right? But what I'm seeing is the acceleration of getting down to the insights that help you unbundle a complex situation into its components of people, process, technology in like a 10x speed, right? And that is happening because now there's this fourth dimension of data, having a foundation of data, right? So just to give you an example, right? When I was a master black belt, I would spend 60 days collecting data, doing training, doing something called as a measurement system analysis, which is making sure that the data is not biased in any which ways, take out outliers, do the analysis, et cetera, right? I think the world today has moved on, and with data, you get to do all of that in maybe a week, if you're pushing it, right? Again, I'm trying to use an example of showing how much of a shift that has happened, right? But then also I realize that, when we use the word data, it's used very loosely. It's used as if, you go and you pluck it, and it's there for you to look at it, right? The reality is obviously that, the world that we live in, there's data in a lot of places, almost saying it's everywhere. But how are you able to capture it? That becomes then the challenge, right? So let's use this example, right? In most of my client conversations, almost all of them, I would say, right, the two common areas of focus from a transformation or an improvement standpoint are: how do I drive efficiency or reduce the cost to serve?
Mm-hmm.
And or how do I improve CSAT with whatever variables there? Be FCR in terms of first call resolution. It could be NPS, it could be surveys, it could be whatever, right? I haven't seen a conversation where one of these two isn't there, right? More than likely, both of them kind of operate in conjunction, right? So in such kind of a situation, I mean, again, it comes down to what information do you have? What information can you share that you can do, right? How much of information do you want to get from social media? Because everybody is posting information there, right? They react to how brand experiences have been, how their own CX experiences have been there, right? It also comes down to understanding who's calling, what are they calling about? Why did they call in the first place? Was the problem resolved? If so, how was it resolved? Who resolved it, right? And was it the most optimal way of doing it, right? Now, I also believe it's not possible to bring all of this information if you're there. And I think I've seen maybe 10-15% of the customers that I work with who can give me this view.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. You get what you want, and then you compensate with maybe some degree of manual data collection, some degree of structured information. do interviews, and so on and so forth. So when we say data, and it can sound like an overwhelming word, it doesn't have to be. And I think that's the point that I was trying to make with when I say you need the foundation of data to help you accelerate through these aspects.
I like it a lot, and it's an underlying value proposition of KYP. What connects us very closely is this master blackbird story. And I remember running operational excellence. We spent days and months collecting data across the board. And to my surprise, when we are starting with our new customers, we see that the data is very fragmented.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Still, it's really difficult to make sense. You have certain portions of information, but you lack the holistic picture. Now, I would like to go to the combination of operations and technology,
Yeah.
right? So the interplay between people, between processes that constitute ultimately the operations, and another aspect that fuels it additionally is clearly technology. How do you approach the two in a most symbiotic way? Operations and technology mix. What is the recipe for success?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I think it comes to the heart of why we are having this fireside chat, right? And we've seen organizations where the departments exist separately. The degree of collaboration varies from a very high degree of alignment to each having their own set of agendas or KRAs to work with, right? I think the way to think about it, and I'm just wearing a practitioner's hat, going back to my Lean Six Sigma days, right? If we are able to actually articulate the business challenge or business goal in a very clear, crystal manner of saying, this is what we're trying to achieve, quantify it to the level that you can, because what does not get measured cannot get improved, right? And then I think it comes down to understanding the underpinnings of how that challenge or goal gets addressed, right? So again, it doesn't change a very structured thinking approach that most organizations adopt, but it comes down to, are you able to achieve your operation or your goals, or are you able to address the challenge with operational levers, operational interventions, etc., that can be met? So in other words, right, can you convert your business goal, business challenge into an operational challenge, find the operational solution, and be done with it, right? Or in addition, or as a substitute to the operational challenge, do you need a technology intervention? In which case, can you articulate it as a technology challenge? So articulating the business goal challenge aspect into these two components, and then breaking it down into one or two, or oftentimes the combination of two, but again, making it an operational solution, right? At the end of the day, you are trying to use operations to achieve your goal. You will need to make it an operational solution. I think that's the path. But here are a couple of other things that I think I'd also like to call out. I think we need to understand that this is not a one and done exercise. You don't start a project, be done with it, and assume we're all there, right? I think we've all learned it that you need to go through incremental cycles. Change is hard, and I was hearing this in one of our conference that I was attending recently. It said it's very hard to be an agent today, right? Because there's so much of complexity in the interaction to the systems, to where you're trying to get stuff, focusing on being in the moment and helping the customer and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, keeping all of those elements into play is important. So make it incremental. And then the other thing that I think we also need to understand is there's no one size fit all, right? Again, what got you here need not necessarily get you there, right? So you've got to look at every instance on its merit, decide what's the right kind of intervention, and move forward. A lot of what I'm saying is not new. Again, it's an age-old thing, but I think over time we've undermined, or we've diluted how significant some fundamental elements are still very relevant and very powerful to get there.
Awesome. And, I've been to the consulting side as well in the past, right? I've seen all these BCGs and McKinsey's coming, and they were not as eloquent as you, right? But had similar recipes. I would like to nail it further. How do you implement that?
Yep,
How do you
absolutely.
operationalize it? How do I make sure it happens?
Yeah. So I think, a different way to think about it is, how do you make it human? How do you make transformation human in a way that the human, which could be your customer, it could be your agent, it could be an employee, it could be a support function, that they can not just embrace it, but they can thrive in it, right? That's the secret at the end of the day. It's not in breaking down complex problems into manageable chunks, setting milestones, running agile projects, etc. It's all about that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Folks, just a reminder, please post your questions. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So if you have anything, please keep them coming along. Adam and I can keep talking all day like this, and we do that for a living. But we'd love to hear questions from you. Sorry, Adam.
Absolutely. So keep me honest. Data is everywhere. What do you do next?
So again, right? I'm going to use an example of how we've addressed this whole aspect of data being everywhere, but yet not being available, right? Again, the structure of, hey, measure the baseline, look at data-driven insights, right? Do the thing that you need to do, measure, etc. I think we all know how that works. I think the piece that I'd like to kind of think about as we've evolved, as things have changed, as we operate in a more dynamic environment, is obviously adoption, and I'm going to come to that in a bit. But it's also about focusing on a few important things, right? Um, First of all, are you friends with your data? Do you really know what resides where? How can you get access to it? When you need it, in a way that you need it, etc. I think that's one part. The second part is, do not think of a solution where you get all your data from one place and you're done, or you need to collect it all manually and that's the only way forward, right? I think organizations today operate with enough of that environment where there is a fair amount of information available. It's all about knowing where it resides and how you get access to it, and then complementing that with some degree of manual effort, maybe, right? So the example that I was kind of thinking about when this question came up is, for a very leading tech company, it's a tech manufacturer. We had to do a contact audit. They wanted to know, how do you reduce the number of calls that hit a contact center, right? And they have products from software to hardware to even within hardware, home use, commercial use, etc. Right? It's a big problem, and they handle probably close to 1 million calls, if not more. Like we handle, right? I mean, they have much more, right? That's what it is. And when we went into kind of unbundling this whole challenge and breaking it down into aspects of how do we get to really getting some insights, that was the path we had to adapt. We had to work with our customer, and we did, and we had some terrific support there, get access to the information that we needed to, but then complement it with a Google form that was very easy for the agents to fill and so on. And we really got some very interesting insights. So despite organizations of the caliber that I'm talking about, multi-billion dollars, some insights were very powerful. Like, for example, what are your top 5 call drivers, right? What we also discovered was that, and from a process standpoint, right, an agent might have thought he resolved the issue, so he marks it as done, right? About half the time, but 60% of the calls actually come back as a repeat call, right? And so on. Again, going back to people, process technology, foundation of data, and so on and so forth. Here are instances where you can actually bring everything together and be able to unearth insights that you've not had before, right? Some of them actually led to discovery around some basic product issues, right? and so on. So I can keep going on and on and on, but that's the point that we're trying to make, right? Number one is to be able to use data to the best of its availability, but complement it with human effort. And then the other part of it is to push interventions with the adoption cycle, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit.
I love it, and I agree with you. I like the formulation. I wanted to say data is king nowadays. Some people say it's the oil, but I love the statement data is your friend, right? And I think the question is nowadays with the speed of operations, are you able to generate it in real time or near real time, right? So that you can constantly course correct if required. Then measure the progress of what you're doing. To your point, right? There is incremental improvements based on what you diagnose, and then validate this impact at scale. Is it generating the ROI that we were talking about? Question.
Yeah.
How do you drive adoption and value?
Yeah. Again, I'm going to dip into something that I've learned and embraced significantly. I think adoption becomes the humanness of how transformation really comes to yield the results that it's meant to be, right? And a simple way to think about it is a classic equation, which is the effectiveness of what you're trying to bring in as an intervention is the multiplication of how good that intervention is and how well it's been adopted, right? So think of it this way, right? And Adam, you see this as well. So it's when I say, think of it, I'm sure it means for all of us. But, I could have the best solution out there. So 10 on 10. But if my adoption is a 1, then the effectiveness is only a 10, right? But even if I have a solution that's a 5 on 10, but I got a 5 on 10 adoption, then it's 2.5 times more powerful in terms of effectiveness, right? And I think this is where the human element starts to come in, right? Because when we're trying to talk about the mix and driving the balance between technology and operations as the combined force, I think this equation summarizes it really well, right? One does not stand without the other, right? But at the same time, right? One is not more important than the other. I think they're both equally important. At the end of the day, it's all about being human. The other thing about adoption, to your point, is how the human psyche works, right? And again, if you go back into history, all major technological transformations have gone through what we call as multiple S curves, right? So you go through different levels of evolution. But if you kind of look at an S curve, right, one of those S curves, and kind of humanize it, I think to me it's all about moving from a stage of resistance to reluctance to reliance, right? You will have a natural tendency to resist something that you're not used to doing, and that's the heart of change, right? But then when you start to see some of the people use it, embrace it, so you'll still have some degree of reluctance. So you've moved a step forward, but it'll still take time. But then once you get to the stage where you really start to see it work, that's when you start to rely on it, use it a lot more, etc. So I like to think of adoption as the 3 Rs, if you think about it. And whenever I've kind of had that kind of a conversation with my customers, I think they tend to agree in a big way.
I love it. I love it. And coming from where I currently live, in Germany, we love quality, of course, but more importantly for us, the discipline of executing what is being defined is paramount. So the formula is my favorite now.
Thank you. I've got to patent it, maybe. All right. So moving on, I think if you think about the conversation that we've had over the last 40 minutes or so, we started talking about why CX is important. We've shared our experiences around how we've experienced CX in various forms and shapes and how deeply it impacts certain aspects of how we think of a brand to, what are the challenges around getting to where CX needs to be, to how do decision makers look at various use cases or opportunities, or prioritize where to put their effort, right? Could be human capital, could be monetary capital, could be intellectual capital, whatever. um, to then saying, hey, all this is fine, but how do we really now make this work, right? Which is where we talked about the operationalization aspect. And then we talked about how do you get to efficiency. So in a way, I think we've kind of covered a whole lot of things, Adam. But I want to now get practical. I want to now say, hey, this is all great, right? But how does this really work? How does this really start to play out in a real world? So I'd love to hear some real examples. I have a couple to share, but I definitely want to get your thoughts in first.
Excellent. So, as I said earlier, first you need to define the problem, right? Too many people jump to execution before specifying the desired future, or better to say the undesired now, right? And once we generate the necessary data points, the insights then connected to recommendations towards business outcomes. Let me give you an example. Nowadays, there is a big drive towards individual assistants like Microsoft 365 Copilot or Google Gemini, right? What we try to answer very pragmatically is who should get the license based on the patterns, right? And this is, in my opinion, the fastest path to low risk and high reward driven results that are impacting people, process, and technology dimensions of your operations that you were talking about. So KYP helps you to basically capture the necessary data, always with the outcome in mind. Right? We call it AI for every agent, which brings profound insights and patterns, allowing you to create faster results at scale, right? And the initial configuration has to be contextualized. And this is why I appreciate our partnership with Alorica IQ team, right? With their outstanding vertical expertise, because in all fairness, machines still have their limitations, right? That's why I'm talking about augmentation in transformation. So we do that, and then we measure the progress. For instance, are you more productive or resolving your customers' problems faster? Right? Is Prashant shortening his path to India, being stuck in Madrid? Right? How do I make sure that I'm creating impact? And this leads us finally to the outcome validation and pattern generation for an ongoing improvement that you were talking about at scale, right? Yeah. Earlier this year, we have launched, for instance, something that we call KYP Concierge, which allows our customers to directly interact with our platform using natural language. The way new generations are learning is completely different, right? So we try to reduce these entry barriers and learn from OpenAI, right? ChatGPT taught me a lot. Initially, I thought I can speak with dashboards to interpret the data, things that you as master black belt would love, right? Because you got your data, you got the first insights, interpretations. Nowadays, we're reducing the entry barriers, allowing less experienced individuals to ask the question and get the list of recommendations and actions. And this is awesome, right? Because this elevates their potential to create the impact. And for me, it's one of the most critical aspects. How do I embrace the opportunities, maybe not having Prashant's experience of 25 years?
Well said, Adam. Yeah, one of the things that I've also found while working with KYP's platform for getting those insights is the coverage, right? And again, I'm drawing a parallel to how data was collected in the past to where we are today. You almost always had to rely on a sample to get insights, and you had to do a lot of analysis, a lot of sampling. If an agent was away from the floor or was on unscheduled leave and stuff like that, your data had to maybe sometimes get restarted, right? So you had to reset stuff and so on. What your product has helped us do is to actually be able to install it on user desktops across the entirety of population if you want to, right? And then be able to gather the universe of data, not a sample of data, right? So aspects like unconscious bias, aspects like, hey, is this representative of the entirety of things, right? Gets very, very easily addressed. But the other thing that I particularly liked is one aspect of how agents, again, this is the human element of how transformation really lies with them, is how the same process with the same set of tools, with the same kind of customer inquiries, and with the same variables that are in play in terms of either limitations or opportunities, are still handled differently by different agents, right? So it's almost like you have a map that goes all over the place. You see the happy flow, which is how I think your process was designed to be. And then you see all these variances that can come in, and then say, this is the outliers. How do we mix it, right? Or how do we harmonize it in an effective manner? Again, sorry, I'm going to get very technical. I'm passionate about Six Sigma, but one of the things that we're always told is address the special cause before you address the common cause, right? That's a Lean Six Sigma terminology. But I think the point that basically says is, if you are able to identify your outliers, if you're able to focus on them, you can go on. And then, of course, you're also able to identify best practices. So not everything is about finding things that are bad. It's also about finding things that are good, and then multiplying that across the rest of the organization. So I think it's really helped both ways, and I'm sure you have case studies. I have too. But do you want to quickly touch upon them? I think we're coming up the 10-minute timeline, so I want to make this quick.
Absolutely. At the bottom of the slide, you see some of the immediate impact examples, right? KYP has been designed to generate rapid results in days, not months, right? And both business and IT teams love the simplicity when it comes to what we call productivity intelligence at scale. Let me go to the three examples. One of our global Tesco customers added within just 4 weeks, 500,000 worth of capacity in Asia without hiring one person. Right? This is sometimes absolutely critical when you have a peak, right? Suddenly the demand spikes. What do you do, right? And through the dynamic utilization of the resources that had more bandwidth, which was not visible to the workforce management team, right? They very easily generated this very simple contribution, right? That was then followed by other multi-million cost reductions our platform enabled for. We are also streamlining automation at scale, right? We were talking about automating, and in the middle, at the bottom, you see the example of 12,000 manual working hours that were a low-hanging fruit for one of our CPG and retail customers, who can now leverage the zero-agent customer interaction, which was uncovered by the KYP automation pattern discovery. So yes, you can do the chatbots in certain areas, but you need to know where. Because we also were able to show some of your clients where not to put the chatbot.
Yep.
Because there were stressful situations, and you don't want to talk to the machine when something is getting very, very tight. And finally, we're also helping to address problems in other areas like finance, for instance. One of our American FMCG customers got their month and closing process accelerated through identification of frictions that were detected by KYP. Right? In the reconciliation and consolidations efforts. I don't want to go into details, but in case anyone in the call is interested to learn about that, me and Prashant are very happy to demonstrate some of the capabilities and shed some more light on all the details.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Adam, using your examples, right? The one thing that I'm taking away is the problems that are getting addressed here are not simple problems. They are complex in terms of the underlying aspects that go into addressing something like this, right? And obviously, what you do in terms of providing the technology platform and what we bring in terms of understanding the complexities, making sure your data collection tools can capture what we need to capture, and then presenting an outcome-based approach kind of collaborates very well, right? I think the other aspect that it just occurred to me was that as we think about these examples and as we think about how they get to play within an organization, right? There are questions that come in terms of is your platform um, meeting InfoSec requirements because you're capturing data at a desktop level, right? So could you just spend a minute on it, and then I'll use my examples to wrap it up?
Absolutely, with pleasure. See, we are coming from a GDPR country, right? Germany is obsessed with privacy. So nowadays, it's not about spying on what's happening. It's about unlocking the potential, right? And you can anonymize at all levels. We already do it on the user machine, right? There's only productive context analyzed most of the time in the department, process, or team level, right? So this individual dimension becomes less and less relevant. However, if you want to see patterns, who should get the Copilot license, right? You can do it as well, right? And then you can say, okay, I'm enabling my employees to do more, to be better, and maybe to not spend overtime hours in the office on Friday evening, right? Because this is one of the paramount aspects. So I will finish with one aspect. There's too many organizations that are focusing on who is not doing what, and not enough replicating best practices that they have, right? Unlocking and understanding how your top performers are executing and replicating it across is absolutely critical to success. And this is the final statement. And my discovery that I made in the last years when we were analyzing processes across the entire planet.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think we've shared similar examples too. So, one of our examples of how we worked with you, where we delivered some tangible benefits, revolves around a first-time outsourcer in the form of an insurance agency. They actually handle multiple carriers and provide quotes for their prospects. Uh, and we were able to use your tool of continuous monitoring to actually look at ways in which we could deliver their North Star goal of 30% productivity improvement. And we got to do that because using your tool, we were able to, I mean, we always knew that from a design standpoint, the agents on the agency side were doing licensed, unlicensed work together. But by creating an ability to learn how much time is going into what, how does the process work for each of those situations, what does one need to design to be able to unbundle them, etc., we were able to do that. So it was a very well received uh, solution and proposal. And then the other one obviously was the one that we did for one of the food delivery app companies, where I think we were able to get a $2.5 million savings on an annual basis, which is plenty of money. Keep in mind that a lot of times in our customers' environment, I find that the ability to fund transformation projects comes from finding savings through existing transformation projects. It's almost like a circle that continues to go, right? So in this case, we were able to save that 2.5 million savings because what we were able to do was find the non-value added activities, which totaled roughly 25% of an agent's time, quickly automate them, do some re-engineering, and then get them to work on things that really are value added. So not only did it actually make the customer experience better, it actually helped improve agent experience. And then, of course, you could find money that you could invest for future transformation programs. So those are things that we really like. All right. So time to summarize, right? So I think if I think about all the things that we've spoken about, the key takeaways that I would have for us as KYP Alorica that we've been talking in our audiences, number one, is that the future workforce is all about a combination of humans who are either supported by augmented solutions or automated solutions. Second, you have to forge technology and ops. It's a no-brainer statement, but yes, it's very important. But the ways of how to forge that bond has changed dramatically and continues to evolve. Third, data, which I like to call as voice of the process, is very important. It can help accelerate your transformation goals. And then last being that, the adoption is key. The adoption is what makes transformation human, and you cannot undermine its importance. Did I miss anything, Adam, or anything that you wanted to add?
I love it. And I think that what I would like to close with is the boldness, right? We need to execute, right? There's no time to wait. And yes, there will be mistakes, but it's time to act, to be ahead of the competition and also requirements from the customers, right? Because ultimately it's about Prashant at the airport, willing to fly and continue the journey, right? The story that we started with and nothing else, right? CX is key.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Adam, like always. And I'm sure we can keep talking on this topic for many, many more hours, but we're at the top of the hour. For all our participants, thank you so much for making yourself available, joining us and listening to us. We appreciate it. Depending on which part of your world you are, it's good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Talk to you guys again soon on a different webinar or a fireside chat. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.